Welcome back to Odd Socks. So I brought you into the polytunnel, and as you can see, the melons that I planted a little while ago have really started to put on some growth. Now, I have not been maintaining this polytunnel as much as what I should be. When we built it, it's all good and well, but the other polytunnel reacts so much different to this one. This one has hardly any condensation, where the other one is exceptionally humid in that particular polytunnel, and that's where we grow most of our tomatoes. This one has been much drier. Now, the main reason for that is because in the other polytunnel we have raised beds. Well, contained beds, shall we say, because for me raised beds is at least to the knee. This has just got boards to keep the soil in place, and we used a lot of bagged compost when we first built that polytunnel. Now, that polytunnel is probably about a foot or more deep of good quality compost. This was built at the beginning of the year, and these beds are a couple of inches of decomposed compost that we made ourselves. In fact, it probably could have done with a little bit longer. And when we've planted these chilies and these melons into the ground, when we've dug down, because obviously they're potted plants, so it's not just a dibber into the first few inches, we brought up a lot of clay to the surface, and that's what is underneath this compost is actually heavy clay soil. And obviously with all the rain that we've had, it actually still comes underneath the polytunnel and actually soaks the beds quite a lot. So that was the first big thing that I figured was so different with this polytunnel, was I hadn't accounted for how much I had to water this polytunnel. The other polytunnel we only have to water once a week. This polytunnel, that was a big mistake. And because of that big mistake, what's happened is this. Now, obviously, this is from a pot, so it is slightly different, but this is blossom end rot. Now, blossom end rot doesn't have to be just on the ends, it can be on the sides. It's basically the plant not being able to transfer calcium in the right way. Now, it can be a lack of calcium in the soil, but 9 times out of 10, it's inefficient watering, either too much water or not enough. Now, this polytunnel was certainly not getting enough. I think sometimes by the time I got back from a really long shift, I was probably too tired to come down, and this polytunnel definitely dried out much quicker than I was actually expecting it to. Like I said, the other polytunnel is continuously moist. We have not got any moisture at all on the inside of this polytunnel. So we have 2 polytunnels on the same site, built in different directions, mind you, and they are completely different on the inside when it comes to either the weather or even the temperature. Now, when I talk about temperature, I've just gone and picked up my thermometer. Now, there isn't a massive difference between the temperatures in both tunnels until it gets very hot. This one is dramatically hot. Now, we do have the window open and the top of the door at least open, but if it's windy, the bottom door gets kept closed. And this is the temperature of the maximum that we actually had. Now, you can see that's a 57.6 degrees. That is incredibly hot for these plants. At the moment, it's 25.9, and considering it's not really a sunny day, that's quite good. But 57.6, that is too high, way too high. So I'm going to redesign my door a little bit and actually put nets on for the summer months. I don't need the excess heat. I think I'm glad I waited because of how cool our temperatures have been. I think the extra thermal bit on the door actually helped keep some of the heat on early on. But I think now the weather is a little bit better. To have a continuous through breeze here would be much, much better, more beneficial for the plants in the long run. So I've been spending a bit more time coming down here and watering every other day. And I've noticed a big dramatic difference in the peppers that are in the ground, the health and the quality of those plants. The ones in the pots are doing okay, and we've actually started putting trays below to capture some of that water because the water just wasn't soaking in, it was just draining through far too quickly, and it just wasn't enough for the chili pepper. And I was coming into chili peppers that were seriously wilted. But I have never ever had so many chili peppers that are actually ripe on the plant before even the 1st of July. It's kind of scary how much fruit I've actually got on these plants. Now I would have had an awful lot more if it hadn't have been for that blossom end rot. I've lost quite a lot to the plant actually rotting away on the actual plant or being dropped early because of the inconsistency with the watering. But it is absolutely crazy how many red chilies and peppers I have here in this polytunnel. I've never had them so early, and I didn't actually really sow these chilies and peppers any earlier than the majority of what people do when they do sow these chilies and peppers. So I'm really quite shocked. Now, there is still so much growing time left here in the UK. We've got the whole of July, August, and a lot of the times well into September. And it's nice to see that these chili peppers and peppers are actually starting to put on a little bit more growth instead of just that focus on those few chili plants. I'm going to do things a little bit differently next year. I will still do a few in late February like I've always done, but I will probably do a few later on in March as well, because I think these were just so quick to grow in the home, and I think when they came out with fruits and things like that, that's what they were focused on, is producing that fruit, not all that great big luscious growth that I'm really used to with my chili plants. Now you can see I've got my melons here as well, and I've been trying to come into here and I will twine round the shoots that I want to grow the melons off. Now these have been absolutely crazy, considering I come in here every day and I wind the stems around. I'm actually, over the last few days, gaining about a foot a day on some of these plants, which is really a crazy amount of growth. Now I do have to sort out these side shoots. I've got an awful lot, and I've just got to figure out which ones I need to take off and which ones I don't. And I should do that a bit later on. It's just been a bit hot for me to be able to work in this polytunnel at the moment. The baby watermelons are doing okay, but I didn't get a massive amount of growth last year off of these either. And I definitely need to come in and weed. I have got an awful lot of weeds growing in my borders. But so far, I think they look all right. Now, obviously this is my biggest one, and I think this is a Malaga. So I'm really hoping I'm going to get some tasty fruits off of these. If you're growing melons, it is really amazing how quickly they do start growing. Now, once they do start growing, they really do like a lot of water. And these really do need watering most days, considering how hot this polytunnel gets. So these have been getting a fresh drink of water every day, and maybe once or twice a week with some comfrey tea. And it really has helped these grow. That one looks fine, and it has got a few other fruit on it. That one looks good too. Now I've got several poblanos, which were doing really well, but I'm losing all the fruit to pest damage. And this one I can feel. Look at that. I'm hoping that these are going to flower again and I'll get a half decent crop. What a shame. Now, and again, the poblanos I am really struggling to keep from not rotting away, or blossom end rot, or insect damage. I have got more flowers, so I'm really hoping the new sets will actually come out quite healthy. But these just look like they've been eaten from the inside out. But it's okay, I've got more flowers coming, more small fruit, and hopefully these later fruits might actually do something. This one again, I've got quite a lot of pest damage on these particular fruits. But I've got one or two, actually I have got more than I thought on this one, that seem to be doing quite well. And I don't know what number this is, so that's a number 10. Now sometimes if it's like that, it's quite hard, it's not too soft. I might be able to harvest that and actually just cut off the bad bit. That one's actually doing quite well. And I think these are the sweet peppers, but this kind of thing drives me insane. You wait so long for your chili peppers to actually ripen, and then they just get eaten. See, this is what drives me nuts. Look at the damage on that. Now that's not disease or anything else, that is pretty much slug damage. In fact, I'm having to pull off slugs every night off my chilies because they really do seem to enjoy eating my chilies. Now this is my Chilchuck or Nero, I think it is. Now I had a real hard time with the original plants. They were not very strong, they were the only ones that I struggled to germinate. But this is actually starting to produce quite nicely. Now I've actually only got one or two of these plants, and I've got a few in pots and I've got a few in the ground. So it'll be interesting to see how well these do. Now these early jalapenos have done okay so far, but they are tiny, tiny. Now I'm used to quite large jalapenos. In fact, last year's jalapenos were quite big, well, for a jalapeno. Now I wanted to grow these as something different this year because I wanted to see the difference between the normal and these. Now don't get me wrong, I've definitely got them ripe early on, but they are tiny. Now I don't know whether this is the variety or whether it's actually just been stunted on the actual growth of the chilies themselves, but we shall see. But I don't think I'm going to get much stuffing in there, and that's what I was going to try and grow a lot for, was to make some stuffed jalapenos. So you can see all the melons there. Hopefully, I'm really fingers crossing this year that I'm going to get a half decent harvest of melons. And obviously down the bottom end I've got my gherkins. But as you look around, you can see those little picks of red from all the chilies that are starting to ripen. I've just never had it in this country where I've had so many chilies starting to ripen. Well, chilies and peppers this early on in the year. What a crazy year. Now these are my red cherries. These are growing very, very well, but they haven't started to ripen yet. But it looks like I am going to get an awful lot if I can keep these alive, which means I need to be more diligent with my watering and my feeding and actually staking it up. I've actually got a stake in here and the plant's not even attached to it. So I need to make sure that I'm actually dealing with the extra growth with some canes and actually tying in what I need to tie in. So that's my polytunnel so far this year. Again, swings and roundabouts. To be honest though, I think a lot of the issues that I've had with my chilies so far has been literally down to me. Not enough watering, leaving it far too long in between the watering and stressing the plants out far too much, because I was treating this polytunnel exactly the same as my other polytunnel, which is a lot more moisture, but that's because the beds are much deeper and it's compost, so it's holding on to that moisture for much, much longer. In here I haven't got that, and I really, really misjudged my watering here in the polytunnel. But I'm going to rectify that now, and I have still got plenty more flowers coming on all these plants. So hopefully any new chilies or peppers that I get going forward, fingers crossed, should be in better condition. All I need to do now is stop that pest damage, because there is nothing more frustrating than waiting all that time for a chili pepper or a sweet pepper to actually ripen, and lo and behold, something gets to it and eats it before you do. So I need to have a think about that. But the one thing that I have planted this year is taro. Now I bought this from the supermarket. You can buy them and they're like little tubers. Now I wanted to grow taro last year, which I did, but I wanted to grow it for my pond because apparently it likes a really wet feet. So I grew it and then I left it outside in the winter and it got killed off. So I have grown more taro this year. Now I've not long planted this and I probably should have done it a little bit sooner. Now that is one bulb, and as you can see I've got several different shoots off of it. Now whether I grow this for food or whether I'm just going to grow it for the decorative foliage, I haven't quite decided, but this will get really quite tall and I'm really looking forward to see how I do with this. Now you can grow this in our country all through the year, but you will have to bring it probably indoors or a heated greenhouse to keep this going any longer. Now I know there's certain varieties that you can grow in this country that you can eat that will actually crop quite well. So maybe in the future taro is one that I'm going to be growing for the actual crops. Maybe that's a plan for the future. So that's it for me today. It is getting far too warm in here, 30 degrees at the moment. That's just beyond me. I'm not one for heat. So guys, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you some better updates in the near future. Now don't get me wrong, some of these chilies are fantastic and I'm really lucky to get what I've got so far. But if I can actually just keep a few of these chilies and peppers to myself without them getting eaten or dying or falling off, it would be a little bit better. But thanks for watching guys, and I shall see you hopefully in the next video.